How are we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Shaun Attwood channel. I'm Ron Swanson, and today we are here with Rob D'Amico, and we're going to delve into some of the scary, harsh, maybe sometimes, maybe the unknown realities for a lot of you who are watching when it comes to drones, warfare, and looking at the two sides of war, the guerrilla warfare, whether it's civil unrest or it's militias, right the way up to our own governments and what we're rolling out as Ministry of Defense tools in 2025. First of all, Rob, thank you so much. Me and Rob have just filmed this intro 9 times because my brain malfunctioned. So thanks so much for being here, Rob. First of all, introduce yourself to us and just tell us a little bit about who you are, and we'll jump into this.
Yeah, Rob D'Amico, retired from doing 26 years in FBI. Before that, I was a Marine, infantry and reconnaissance, enlisted an officer. Most of my time in FBI was embedded on I was in the hostage rescue team, and then I was embedded to JSOC and some other special mission units, a lot of time in Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa.
Wow.
And then my last big tour with the Bureau was running all FBI operations in Afghanistan as a legal attaché, and then came back and took the counter drone unit for a little while before I retired and went on the corporate side. I now do security consulting and some other stuff around those edges, do a lot of media, national news, and then doing a podcast now, Inside the Line with Rob.
Wow. I mean, that's what you call a resume, Rob. First of all, that's impressive. So let me, before we jump into the main meat of this, let me just pick your brain for a minute then, because that's quite an interesting baseline that you've got for being able to evaluate the progression of technology in this sort of warfare. So from your own experience, when did you first notice, drones or any form of tool, whether it's like a remote controlled or airborne, sort of creep its way into the civil unrest side of warfare? When did you see that sort of first pop its head up?
Well, the big thing when robotics came in was us in Iraq with IEDs. So it
Right.
started with the robots going up to take pictures of the device in order to figure out things. So that was really kind of, and each war has like if you look at the wars like Vietnam, the biggest thing that came out of it was the medical evacuation. If you can get someone onto an emergency room, a trauma center, within an hour, the chances of life went up. And it really changed how medical on the civilian side in the US happened because of that. And then if you look at Iraq and Afghanistan, the big thing that came out of it was IEDs. How that you could take a insurgency that didn't have a lot of weapon systems like we did, and how that insurgency could really hurt a major military force with tanks and and armored vehicles and such. And it really was big. So in that, with the IEDs you started seeing the robotics going into to defeat the IEDs, and it's passed to civilian law enforcement. There's so much cross functional between military and law enforcement. Now you see, and being on both sides of it, on the FBI's hostage rescue team, where we were the counterterrorism force here back in the States to do very complex hostage rescues and complex raids on sophisticated targets, so to speak, or dangerous ones. We were working with the special mission units over in Iraq. And what was funny was, our negotiation, after Waco and some of the other things that you don't have to, if you don't have to, you don't go in, you negotiate with them, you let time be on their side. That actually transpired when the unit that went to arrest Saddam's sons, they're thought to be in a building, and they ended up getting a lot of guys hurt, and I think a couple canines killed. And then they figured out, wait, there's no, and they were normally a hostage rescue unit, so they were using some of those tactics. And they said, wait a second, they don't have hostages in there. And they just basically backed off and put like 25 TOW missiles into the building because they saw it like, hey, look, you have one tactic where if you're rescuing a hostage, you do things a certain way. You'll take certain risks because you're trying to save someone. When no one's in there to be rescued, you don't have to do the same. So, and then we were doing call outs like in the FBI. We surround the place, we'll call people out, we have them come out with their arms up and have them lift their shirts. We started doing that in Iraq too, where if there's no hostage in there, we would call them out and then we'd send a dog in with the camera. So tactics go back and forth between the two, just making sure the situation's right. So you saw the same thing on the IEDs with the remote stuff coming back to bomb squads here, and the FBI's render safe unit that deals with the tactical, the nuclear side of things. So that was really where I started seeing robotics come in. And then the drone side, I started seeing Afghanistan. I was the assistant legal attaché in Bagram in 2015 and 16. And I was working with the task force up there, was the counterterrorism task force. So we were away from Kabul and we started having a lot of drone incursions onto the base. We had one, it was a self-worn.
What year was that?
That was
what year was that?
2015 and 16. So I wasn't there before. I think they probably had seen some. I was there, for 2 years, and it started. We started seeing incursions, but there wasn't any device to tell you if it was a drone or not. And as we'll talk about later, when you start saying, "Oh, I think it was a drone," and people start looking up, especially at night, and this comes back to that whole thing in New Jersey. People don't understand what they're looking for in the sky. Everything looks like a drone: planets, low flying satellites, manned aircraft. So as soon as someone says drone, like when I was with the FBI's counter drone unit, as soon as we said we were there, everyone started spotting drones, and we're like, "Oh, that's not really a drone. That's not a drone." I did the same thing when I took the unit. So we had it was a guy built a suicide vest and ended up cooking it off and killing a number of soldiers. And that was, I was actually a few hundred yards from it. I was walking to the Veterans Day parade, Veterans Day 5K run. So it was around November 11th. It might have been the day before or something. And actually, I had changed my mind. I was leaving my compound to go walk down to the 5K run, and I decided I knew my laundry was done, so I kind of went back to throw it in the dryer, and that probably saved me from being in the blast radius. I mean, that's how close I was to it. But when that happened and we started looking at like, okay, who was involved, all of a sudden, all these people started reporting drones dropping explosives over the fence, because there was a big wall and wire between us and the outside community. Everyone started seeing these drones that were dropping stuff, and there was no system out there to really tell you what was a drone. There was a counter missile system that was great, but it wasn't picking up low flying drones. It was picking up trajectory of a like a rocket or a mortar.
Yeah.
And there was no systems like no radar at that level. There was no RF. There was nothing really picking up drones. That was just getting into it. And I started like hearing more about it. And then when I went down to Kabul as the LEGAT a couple years later in 2018, drones got a little bit more prevalent in that. And it's a cheap way to look where you can't look. One guy can throw up a drone just like a kid, and the military started using it that way too, like the Marine Corps and reconnaissance guys. Like as a recon guy, we would have to walk for days, lay in like the nastiest stuff just to get your scope on a place to see what was happening. That's reconnaissance. Now you can basically be a few miles away, pop up a tiny drone and send it in. Now they're getting better, like we talked about, clearing buildings and hostage rescue, where you can have drones go in and drones can look for you, and they can also kill for you, and you can hook different things up to it. So small drones are getting to the point, because like when you really look at drones, the Predators were the first real drones out there, but I never really thought of them as that. Like they're just like big airplanes that fly themselves.
Yeah.
But in reality, they are, they're drones just like the other ones. They just have, different systems, and they're bigger, and you can hear them more so than others. But that's kind of where the first ones came out. But really where drones started getting weaponized at the lower level is Syria. And that's where we first started hearing about basically these low-level guys just taking drones and strapping grenades onto it and dropping one grenade on right in the middle of a vehicle or into a group of troops. And that was really where I think the lower level weaponization of cheap commercial drones really started taking off. And because ISIS was young. They were looking for tech guys. They were recruiting a lot out of the UK, computer and software engineers and stuff. And there's reasons for that because they knew what we were doing with phones and they wanted to be safer. But when you
Yeah.
get in the younger guys with technology, they all kind of like flew drones on their own and then started figuring out that they could like weaponize them besides just reconnaissance. Hey, let's throw a grenade on there and try to take a couple people out. And then it goes to the mentality of it. Like now you're worried about like a little buzzing noise because you're taking your safety away. Like when you're in a fob and you can look out and no one's around, you think you're safe. And now a guy over the mountain can pop up a drone and drop a grenade in on you and you don't know it.
Do you think that, when we look at, as we have to say on YouTube, pew pews being the great equalizer? If you're a 6'5" guy and you're built massively, I'm 4 foot tall. If I can arm myself, it's an equalizer.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're going to see the progression of these drones and the progression of in-house coding? Because because Rob, when you say it out loud, they're looking for engineers, they're looking for programmers. This is like some Raspberry, like microchip programming stuff. This is like year one of like college can be putting together little scripts that open and close a little hand to drop something. Are we seeing the introduction of the new great equalizer when it comes to special forces and armed forces against militias?
You're already seeing it now. Ukraine is everything about Ukraine. The invasion of Ukraine now is drones. That's where all the new stuff's coming out and being tested. And you're seeing a smaller country like Ukraine that's heavily out equipment, so to speak, having the ability to and the last one we'll talk about was huge. Before you started seeing it on the front lines, they were really like and there still are using drones in a great offensive way. Now Russia is too. It's now back and forth, but you really started seeing like how you can defeat enemy armor with a drone. And I'm not talking a big drone. They're flying like Mavericks and stuff like that. And if you look at the weight of a grenade, if you weight of a mortar round that you can drop, you can find the drone, especially if you don't have to have that drone. Like their payloads are for sustained stuff, but you can start experimenting going up higher. But you look at the weight of a grenade, so to speak, and which drone can carry it, and you're just basically dropping it on. And now they're doing the point of view video flyers that just fly right into the turret of the tank. Again, tanks were armored for other tanks. They're not armored for a little drone to drop something on the top of the turret where you're most vulnerable. So again,
it's crazy.
Like
it's crazy to think, right? It's crazy to think that is the lion versus the mouse analogy, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
When you've got how many millions and millions of years of development of armored monster, and then the little wasp comes along and stings it, and it's out. It's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating as somebody who's not involved in war. Okay, like if I was part of it, I'd have a very different view. But it's incredible, and it's one of those scary factors that you sort of say to yourself, well, if revolution ever needed to happen, you sort of feel maybe there is hope for if you needed to go up against a huge force. But then on the other hand, it's scary to think what's coming back from the military development, shall we say?
Well, yeah, because now you have it where like non-really trained people started using it. Now you take like very intelligent, trained Green Berets and special mission unit guys to start looking at it and saying, "Whoa, okay, we can do this. We can go even further." Because you're now taking trained guys and saying, okay, these guys are just dropping grenades on the turret. What else can we do? And that's kind of what you saw on their the deep penetration of Russia. I mean, if you look at that,
Okay.
here's a small country that basically took out hundreds of $1 million planes with drones. They put them into the country in a way that they didn't, know they were there. They deployed them from vehicles that I think the drivers didn't even know some of them were, like, the drones were in there remotely, piloted. And they all did it succinct, in succession with what their plan was. And it was an unbelievable, and it like it woke up Russia, like no holds barred. Like, they put their bombers back that
Yeah.
far because everything was getting hit close, because you saw the ship get hit and some other things. So they put their bombers back thinking there's no way that you can get
Yeah.
them. And they
It's
figured
because,
out.
Rob,
So,
it sounds a little bit ridiculous, Rob. Like, if you're in the Vladimir Putin's office and they're like, listen, we've heard
Yeah.
they're duct taping mortars onto drones and they think they're going to take out our aircraft.
Yeah.
It sounds ridiculous. But how effective, man? How effective. That Amazon next day delivery on those drones paid off because it made an impact.
So I think if you look at what just happened with Israel and why did they bomb at this point, they had the same type of drone operation that the Mossad had, that Ukraine did. So
Okay.
Mossad had deep penetrated, and they brought these drones into the country to attack. And I think what really may have turned Israel into we do it now is because of Ukraine. I think Iran figured out, wait a second, Ukraine did this to Russia. Israel is way more advanced in drones than Ukraine is. Do they have something like this going on? And I think this is just my opinion. I think Iran started looking for an operation like that. And I think Israel's thought, if they are now looking for it, we may need to have to execute before we really wanted to, before that if they find one of these drone operations that we have in the country already, it's taken us a long time to get to that point. I think that may have pushed Israel to, in fact, do the attack, use the drones before Iran found them. So I think the world woke up when Ukraine did it. And I think Iran said, wait a second, Israel is much further along in drone warfare and drones than Ukraine. If they could do something like that, we think they may have something in our country. And I think that may have just pushed up the timing of that attack.
Mm. Yeah, it certainly was an eye opener when you seen how Russia was impacted by the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And especially when it was a long time before they got anything really sophisticated drone wise. A lot of the first initial waves, there was a lot of duct tape, and it was kind of eye opening to everyone. And it makes you wonder, moving forward, when it comes to civil unrest in all countries, just how easy it is for militias to implicate these drones. Now, one thing that when we talk about sort of technology, robotics, and things like this, do you remember, and we'll be getting back to the drones in just a second, I'm just side questing us for a second, because do you remember the Israeli pager attack that went on when all of the pagers exploded? Like, to me, that was one of the most, like, evil villain level, like Dr. Evil style campaigns ever. Like, what's your take on that? Because to me, that was an incredibly orchestrated assault onto Hamas. And I don't think anyone's seen that coming. Do you think we're going to see further uses of distributed technologies hijacked like we've seen then?
Yeah, I think so. Israel's always been one to do things out of the box and being very creative. Again, because they're smaller, they don't have the same technology, and they have to use creativity. Where America, we can throw might and money at things. That's what we think. I think we need to go back being more creative, type of thing. But when you look at the pager attack, that is a long, patient, thought out, like you look at how many years that took to set up and they were waiting for the right time to use it. Like that probably
Yeah.
was in place for a while, but to
Yeah.
understand your enemy's vulnerabilities, and then to patiently figure out how to impart what you can do into the supply chain to make them vulnerable. And then,
It's
it
mind
literally
boggling.
was, it is.
It was
And it's one of those, it's like, wow, that really,
uh that
again,
one member of the
a
Israeli
point. But
Mossad think.
you also look at, though, like Al Qaeda took down the World Trade Centers with box cutters, like that in itself. Um, and you look at how much money that cost us, and they would never go back to it again. That's the one thing that, like, Al Qaeda knows. Um, Once they do something, we are going to we the U.S. are reactionary, and now you can't get a box cutter onto a plane, and it's cost us billions of dollars in order to make plane safety. And then they were looking at basically the liquid explosives with the guy out of Yemen, and again changed how we do, how you can bring liquids through
Yeah.
TSA. So
Yeah.
when you look at, again, box cutters brought down the World Trade Centers, the operation, they looked at our vulnerability, they understood it, and being on the FBI's hostage rescue team, one of our primary things was, after the 70s and 80s, was assaulting an aircraft that was hijacked. And it's a very complex, very expensive thing to train for. And we practice shooting on airplanes like you couldn't believe, because it's such tight quarters and you're shooting right by each other. And we did that a couple times a year at least. And then all of a sudden after 9/11, the threat of someone taking a plane hijack, like in Tebby and all the other ones that we've seen in history, was almost gone, because we never thought about using the plane as a weapon.
Mm.
And now that goes into, like, okay, if a terrorist gets on board, he wants to do it in flight. Now we've reacted to it and hardened the doors. And as you fly in a plane and the pilots are going to go into the men's room, they put the service cart there, and they have the two flight attendants, so while the doors open, there's all a bunch of things that we do to prevent someone getting into the cockpit. But Al Qaeda knew we were going to do that. They knew we were going to be reactionary, and they never really went back to planning for that. They ended up going for the shoe bomb and then the liquid bomb. But that's when, like, when you're small and you have to, that's who adapts. Like, if you look at, have you ever seen the original movie Red Dawn with the guys
A
out in
long
Montana?
time ago, Rob.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
You
I
know
know
what?
that, like, if we were to sit and watch it right now, I'd be like, "Oh, this bit, Rob." But could I remember that bit if it wasn't queued up?
Yeah.
Probably not. But yeah, I know
Yeah.
the pretext. Yeah.
The second movie was awful. The first one, though, with Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen, and I forget, a phenomenal movie. And actually, I when we were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, I was embedded with a lot of the special mission units, and I did a lot of the sensitive site exploitation and interrogations on target. And some of the young SEAL guys that we were with, I mean, SEALs are really good at destroying things, and they would go into these houses and they would be looking for things. They would be told by intel that this was a bad house, and they harbored terrorists or whatever. Half the time it was neighbors telling on other neighbors to a point that they didn't like each other. And you come
Yeah.
in hard and you destroy things. Are you making more of the enemy than you are preventing it? Because if you do certain things, and I would use the example of Red Dawn on how they treated, remember, those are Americans in there, and the Cubans and Russians came in and they were doing horrible things to the family. And then you're giving other people inspiration that to do things back to you when you treat people a certain way. So that was a great counterinsurgency movie. Like, when you really look at it, it was a bunch of high
Yeah.
school kids that
Yeah.
ended up, tricking the Russians that were, and I use that movie as an example all the time, and how I treat people on target when I question them and everything else, because that could get into the mindset of an American, because they love that movie and how the Americans, I said, well, we are the occupier in both Iraq and Afghanistan. You have to look at it that way, and that's, McChrystal came in and was really trying to turn the title, the insurgency thing around by understanding civilian civilians that are killed, hurts things in the long run. It may not be worth the chance to take that target unless it's someone that you know. So there's all kinds of things in there we didn't learn from in Afghanistan. Different reasons, I think, because it was most people deployed for a year, so it was like a unit would go in for a year and leave. So the war is being fought 1 year at a time instead of saying, finally some guys, General Miller, who's a friend of mine, he basically went in as the commander at the end and said, I'm going to be here for a while. I'm not doing this 1 year thing, because he kind of understood when you just have one way of doing it and another commander comes in and he changes it a year later, you really can't pick up on things. A lot of the things he was trying to do took time. And he knew if he left, then someone else is going to come in and have a different, attitude and do things differently. So I think that was one part of the problem in Afghanistan. I have a total of over 4 years there from 2003. I think it's the first time I went. And seeing how things were just done, like, wait a second, last time I was here, we were figuring this out. Why, like, it went from doing it and then not doing it and then doing it, and you come back again, like, wait, we figured this out years ago. So it gets tough in that. But again, drones is one of those things, though, that, like you said, it takes a very small force. I don't think we'll ever. Your first question: do I ever think that people will come off the battlefield? No. Sometimes you need to occupy territory. Sometimes you need to actually have people boots on the ground. Drones are going to help them, get there and whatever, and protect an offensive type of thing. But I don't think you're ever going to lose the troops on the ground. Everyone thought that, planes are going to take over, tanks are going to take over. I still think it takes infantry. I think it takes people on the ground. For the interrelationships that we talked about, especially in an insurgency.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
When it comes to the humane side of warfare, so for lack of better terminology, the aftercare, right? And I use that, loosely. 100%. There would be nothing worse than being oppressed or feeling oppressed by a robo army, right?
Oh, yeah.
But what do you think? What do you think about, in the future, instead of having a 5-man squad, you've got a 1-man squad with 4 little drones that are following him and some AI. And as they're sweeping or they're doing house clearances or things like this, instead of a human having to go through the door, do you think we're ever going to see the sort
Absolutely.
of the messier work, if that makes sense, be handled that way?
I mean, we did that with dogs to a point.
Right. Yeah.
And they say, and dogs save plenty of lives, but dogs are unpredictable. They would bite us sometimes. And, I love them though. I mean, they're great. But you are seeing the fact that a squad would be, one human. Cause I don't think you can replace the human, creativity and everything else. I do think I would always put it in 2. Having been alone in positions as a sniper and everything else, having another person to talk to and bounce things off of, I think that would be the ideal. Like, you have 2 guys, or 2 guys and got like whatever, and then you have you have robotics, people that can go clear something, like, and do some of the dirty work. But you still have to have that, human in charge of them. I think it's coming, and I think some of it can even be like some of the suits that you're wearing, that the humans can be stronger because of robotics incorporated into the next generation thing. Don't think that's ever
as crazy as it sounds, Rob. As crazy as it sounds, the one of the industries in the UK where robotic outer shells have taken off is the home decor field. Guys who've got to spend hours painting ceilings. It takes all the weight off the arms and it's crazy where what fields pick up on stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you've got these dudes, and it's saving hours of backache and all of this stuff. And you just think to yourself, when's it going to happen, right? When are we going to see news at 10, the unveiling of the new British Army? And it's a couple of dudes, some drones, a couple of those robo dogs. Because to me, it makes sense from a human. Those are like cool. roll on Iron Man, right? But for me, it makes sense if we talk
But
about the
all of
human
those are
cost.
going to have vulnerabilities. No matter what they
Of course.
are, the guy with the rock is going to figure out how to throw the rock and take out that robo guy.
Yeah.
But I don't, as movies are predictors, like you look back at the original Terminator, and I keep thinking with AI, I'm like, wait a second, that day's coming. Like, like,
Mhm.
back then it was so far gone. Like, oh, you got to be kidding me. With AI and everything else, and I don't think AI should be in charge of weapon systems. Like I'm hard pressed that is a dangerous thing to do. Um,
I
because
agree.
I don't, and it's scary. And I don't think, I think we, like, AI took off, and I think there needs to be more funding to prevent AI going, that rogue place.
Rogue,
I think
right?
the companies that are making so much money off of AI there should be like an AI tax. If you're going to get into AI, you have to pay into this interagency working group to prevent AI from going bad. Like, I think that one video of the robot in China that like fought
Yeah.
the guy that was trying to do something with them. I don't know too much about it, and with AI and deep,
Mhm.
the video again, like you go into AI and like what video is real. Like
Right.
you can take the person's face and you see all kinds of things, and now it's like the babies talking, AI
Yeah.
videos, and they're funny. But when something happens, was that video really real or was it AI? It's hard to tell
This is
now.
it. It's crazy.
So,
It's crazy,
uh,
Rob. I use AI almost every day, and it blows my mind. As an independent one-person operation, AI is brilliant. For every
yeah,
company who's turning over tens of millions in copywriting or design, it's a nightmare for them, you know?
yeah,
But, being able to sit down, as silly as it sounds, being able to sit down and make a bit of content and replace my face with another face and play two characters in something I'm producing is incredible for me. But it's scary because that's just me in my living room. That's just what I get access to. And
yeah,
what is out there, the capabilities of AI is going to be so crucial to warfare when it comes to intelligence, when it comes to threat assessments. We're going to see this evolution of what a camera can understand and what it
yeah,
picks up as a warning sign or a preemptive. And then we've got to ask ourselves, as technology gets better, we've already got lasers that can tell temperatures and all this thermodynamic stuff. How soon before it's your chemicals in your brains and your body reactions that are being evaluated by these drones, so they know
yeah.
ahead of time what's going to happen, because it's coming, Rob. And why wouldn't it? That's the thing. Like, who's going to stop it from getting there? And I'm a big technology nerd, right? So I've made peace with the AI that when they take over, they're going to make me their pet. So I'm okay with that, right? But where do you think the drones are going to go? What's your prediction for the future warfare? Because for me, it seems like a huge deterrent, thinking that a mindless robot could be the thing that decides life or death if it came to the UK, if that makes sense. If someone
Yeah.
decided to attack the UK, it's a scary thought, and it's everyday life for a lot of people. We thank our lucky stars that we don't have to live under these sort of threats. But where do you see it going over the next few years, Rob?
Yeah, I think AI incorporated into drones is going to start. I see it like on the first responder. I think drones are going to start helping people.
Hmm.
Like you can fly an AED to someone who's having a heart attack in the football stadium or something. Can be the first one on the scene to help police or ambulance like get there. And same thing with fire departments. So drone goes up with thermals and can tell you where the hot spots are and everything else. And the more data you get, the more you can incorporate AI into it, and being predictive of things. And then I see that going into warfare, and as drones are going to get smaller, drones are going to be bullets. So instead of shooting a bullet, you're going to fire 50 drones that are the size of a bullet,
Mm-hmm.
that are going to seek out humans and be able to kill them.
Like the drones are just going to be the bullet. Like the drones are
Yeah.
just going to take up speed. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a horrifying thought, Rob,
You know,
that I hadn't even factored in.
yeah,
Little tiny.
I mean, they're gonna have a basically, and I'm not saying it's not even there now. There's small explosives that can do facial recognition and kill the person they're looking for.
Damn.
So
Spicy. It's spicy world, man.
but
It's like
you
when you watch,
can, like I said, you can put facial identification in, like you
of
know, and
course.
then send a small drone, and it's got a small charge on it that shoots a shape charge right into you know, between its eyes. And I'm not saying that's not even not there now. But in a whole, like again, you have these, you know, these drone swarms, everyone thinking bigger drones, but you get in down to tiny ones and they're just act
Yeah.
as bullets.
Well,
Um,
it's when you think about when you see a movie, right, and you've got the big alien spaceship, and then all the tiny spaceships come pouring out the back of it. You know, if you've
Yeah.
got a mother drone with a seek and destroy micro drones, that is, I hadn't thought about that. Okay, I'm still at the stage where sticking stuff on the drones, let alone little things coming off the drones.
Yeah.
So that's why, but it makes sense again. It really does, because it makes way more sense to make something this size at X amount of dollars than something huge at X amount of dollars. And again, it sounds ridiculous that we're talking about budgetary factors on this, but this is where it's all going to go. And I think people need to open up their eyes.
But now you have to look at the defense of that. You know, so what's going to be the defense of it? When I was running the counter drone unit with FBI, you know, we were one of the three agencies that were allowed to mitigate a drone. That means take it over or get in and do something to its flight. Right now, if you throw, I tell people, if you throw a baseball at a drone and hit it, that's the same. You're breaking the same law as throwing a something at an aircraft with people in it. There's no distinguishing right now.
Wait.
Yeah. In the US, in the US,
if you're in your garden, your property, and someone flies a drone over it, no,
you cannot. So I did a show down here with the guy during the drone thing in New Jersey, and everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to do that." Technically, one, you don't own the airspace over your property.
Wow.
There's a whole bunch that you do. Like you can, like you buy the property, you build a building, you know, a house, and you plant
Makes
trees
sense.
on it. And people, there are some commercial applications of the space above your building or whatever, but the federal government actually owns the airspace, and local governments don't. So in order to be able to fly, that has to be, and like, so there needs to be some legal things that come out. And I think like private property should go up like 100 feet, where you actually own the space 100 feet above. You can build a house that's 40 feet. You can plant trees that are 100. But right now, if I fly a drone from public property, I can fly it over your property. And if you shoot it, you're violating a much better, you know, bigger federal law than me. So, and that's the US. I don't know, you know, there's a bunch of countries around the world that have different ones, but in the US, although Congress considers the communication between your phone and the drone protected, like a phone call. So there's even rules about who can intercept those and do things with it and take it over, because it's really odd the way it goes down. So
it sounds like we're seeing rules written by dum-dums here, right? Where it's like, okay,
the rules that just haven't caught up with time. And that's a problem.
That's a better way. That's a better way of putting it. Yes.
So
that's a better way.
It hasn't caught up with technology. So I think it will. I think there's some court things that need to come out and say you basically you have private property from your ground up to, you know, 100 feet. And if a drone's going to come into that, it's trespassing like it would be a person walking on your property. I think what's going to help with some of this airspace situation awareness is companies like Amazon and UPS that want to deliver packages with drones. They really have to then, in order to do that, you have to have very good airspace situational awareness so that you can fly a drone to a house and then you can deliver a package without hitting anything else or another drone or helicopter or whatever. So they have to basically put capital into the ability to do that in order to deliver, you know, package with drones, even though there's testing out there now. And then in that, have to at that point give permission for a drone to actually come onto your property, kind of like with Amazon's garage door. Like Amazon can deliver packages into my, they have the code for my garage door. Same thing,
Yep.
that you give it permission to enter your 100 feet down and below.
Yeah, 100%.
What's the
It makes sense. And it's the Amazon drones, the testing of the Amazon drones.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you said airspace, and before you even put forward your argument for all this, it made bloody sense. It's like, when have you ever heard anyone saying, "Oh, this is my granddaddy's airspace"? It's always my granddaddy's land.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting when things catch up, because yourself, half of these drones, they could be 100 foot, they could be 500 foot. It's the camera that's on them that's the issue for privacy, right?
So, and I tell, like, I've had some high net worth clients that had drones flying over them, and they wanted to do something about it. And I would unfortunately say, well, you really can't in a certain manner. But if this drone flies over your property every day at 3 p.m. and buzzes you and makes a lot of noise and stuff like that, there's harassment laws that you can go to the DA about. But you have to prove it's the same drone doing the same, or if I always said, like, hey, if that drone's looking in your window, there's peeping Tom laws that don't allow that. But you have to prove the drone is doing that. So, I'd gotten drones.
Rob, how long before, right, the companies that make all of the home alarm systems release their own fleets of drones that sit on your roof, and if something enters your 200 foot of airspace that isn't an Amazon drone, they fly up and just intercept that and chase it away or something? Do you think we're going to see the sort of fight back being the same thing?
The problem is, when you, depending on how you do that, if you do it with RF, it can get very dangerous because it can interfere with other things. And that's why it's so restrictive to do that with countering drones. And it's an electronic fight. Like, you're pushing it back towards its controller, then the controller gets more power and it can go forward. There's other, like, nets and everything else like that. So I think the day, if they make your property with your airspace, say 100 feet up, that you can have systems in there like a net that says doesn't allow it to come in, or some type of, I think the technology will get there that you can screen that off, so to speak. But again, the laws have to catch up. The technology has to catch up, because right now you can't. Then we talked about, like, the drone swarms. How do you stop a drone swarm? Depending on how the drone is controlled. Like, if someone's controlling it from the rear and sending it radio signals, you can break the RF pattern between them. But if that drone is pre-programmed and all the electronics inside the drone or what's guiding it to its target, RF intercept is not going to affect that drone. Or if it just gets up to 3,000 feet and guides itself in on a then you're going to have to get into, I was looking at with FBI, ECMs, like because what an ECM would do
this is a nightmare.
Would destroy the electronics in the drone. So the drone's self-flying and it's sending signals to control its, however, drone's rudder and all that stuff. If you do an ECM, it controls electronics inside the drone, and then the drone would not be able to self-direct to a target. And then those ECMs have to be, focused and whatever. But that's kind of one of those, like, last ditch things that, like, if you can't intercept the drone another way, an ECM may cause the drone to fall. And again, if you have people under it, that's what we always look at. Say I was at the Super Bowl with the FBI, and I'm protecting the Super Bowl, against a drone, and I see a drone coming in, and I see it's targeting the stadium, and I can't use my RF, I can't use any of the other technology I had. Well, in ECM, I would have to make the decision, like, look, I'm going to drop that drone over the parking lot. It may kill a person or two in the parking lot, but it's better than making it into the Super Bowl stadium. That's kind of where that decision point you're doing. There's lasers that do certain things, but again, and that's where, like, counter drone is a multi-factor, multifunctional system. RF may get some, lasers may get some other ones, an ECM, eventually that technology has to just keep emerging to fight whatever they're doing. Like, some of the big drones are easier. to destroy. That's where like the Golden Dome, in Israel, and they're talking about a big drone, a lot of money into it, but you hit it with the, a 20 millimeter cannon, or if you can be, preventive, on some like smaller rockets or lasers, whatever, then you lost, big multi-million-dollar drone. Well, the smaller ones are harder to defend against. They do less, but they're also tougher to intercept to a point. But you have to have, I think, all of that into your system if you're trying to defend it.
Do you know, you're a really interesting dude, Rob, right? Can I just say, like, your knowledge is just, you're one of the most interesting people I think I've spoken to this year. I think it's because we're on the same sort of nerdy wavelength with some things, but it seems like a nightmare. It seems like the answer ain't coming fast. The answer ain't coming fast because, the simple, no-brainer suggestion, just take them all down. Just, fire something that disables them, but then you've got the liability, where they landed, who they hitting. It's an argument that is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because even just from a pesky neighbor, peeping Tom, low-level crime point of view, right? I honestly thought I would have seen a lot more of a problem than there is in Scotland and in the UK. I'm sure there is problems, but I've never really seen any. And I'm all for being able to launch something from my garden and have military grade capabilities of surveying my area. There's something really cool about that. And then you look at lockdown, when the germs hit us all, and I had my whole street prepped for. There was a food bank at the end of our street, Rob, and if it kicked off in lockdown, we were going to take control of the food bank so that we could, keep everyone in our area sufficient. And the drones that everyone, people that you didn't think would own drones, 70-year-old dude at the end, I've got this for my grandkids, whips out some 400 quid bad boy, And when you say to them, well, listen, this is going to be a crucial thing. If society was to, rule without law kicked in, or God forbid, if we went without power for a week, nice guys are nice guys until their children have missed 9 meals. Okay.
Yeah.
Once your kids miss 9 meals, your neighbor's cat is looking pretty KFC to a lot of us, and, sitting down and explaining to them, having a bit of technology like that, where you can scope the area, or if there's civil unrest heading your way, it really gives the advantage back. And it's even that level of adding in as a tool is lost on people. It's for spotting birds or flying with their grandkids,
So, when I was doing corporate security, we had some is in the horse racing industry, and we had a practice track with a bunch of stables down in Southern California, and it got burned through with the wildfire, and they were kind of like, what do we do? I'm like, well, one, you're going to get a drone license, and you're going to start being able to fly a drone to look over the mountains to see when it's coming. Like that's all part of it. And it's huge now. And, in wildfires with the drones that you can just pop up again, one man can have it in his pocket basically and say, shit, what's over the next hill? And he can throw a drone up and see. So, and it is great. Like I have a drone, and unfortunately it's a DJI drone, which I'm totally against now. Because they've mapped out our country using the drones. And I think it is a national security threat. But the problem is the drones are so good.
I think you've got good credentials to give us what your fears are on that. I think that's one of the most popular brands of drone.
76% of drones in the US are DJI. They're better drones because their country subsidizes them, gives them more capability and more bang for the buck for cheaper, because basically all that info is getting shot back to China. And the more you fly drones, the more they map out our country.
You're not trying to tell me you think China's up to something, are you? You're not trying to tell me that through surveillance or social media, like at this point, right? I think America should just play China at their own game and just give them everything. Like, here's everything, China. You're still going to do nothing.
So we actually kind of did. So when I was in the FBI, the Office of Professional management, OPM, the government that keeps all the records on all the government people, including my like 90-page security background check. That agency hired a company to redo their IT, and the company was a Chinese-based company. So
Of course it was.
all the online training I had to get about like threats to the IT system, the one guy who decided to go with the contractor that was a Chinese company to redo. I got notified 6 times in the last 10 years of my FBI career that the Chinese had everything that I had, and that's 86 pages. Like, or SF-86 is the form that you fill out. So every 5 years, I had to put all my relatives, everything that I did, and it was all basically given to them. So in fact, we kind of, it's funny, I was retiring from the FBI, and they had lost something in my personnel file, and it pissed me off because it was going to mean less money for me on my retirement. And they said, well, I'm sorry, we just don't have that record. We can't find it. I'm like, go down to the Chinese embassy. They keep better records. They got it. I know they do. And she's just like, she got mad at me. And I'm like, hey, like, not for naught, but I'm sure I could probably ask them and they get it for me.
You know, it's really fascinating, Rob, right? Because a lot of the things that you've been involved with are things I really want to talk about. So, like, I would love to do a whole show just talking about 9/11 with you, because I'm telling you now, we're going to have some differences of opinions here, right? But I think it's healthy. I think for a lot of people in 2025, they think that if you have a difference of opinion with someone, that they're your fucking enemy or something, right? And the whole concept of open discussion and debate and agreeing to disagree is lost on this entire world right now. It's crazy.
I remember growing up, my parents used to have friends over, and they would, you know, have a couple martinis, and they would be arguing back and forth politics wise. I mean, it was just, but they were friends still. They were always friends, you know, and they like, you know, they just went on and they had good talks, and you learned certain things. And I, you know, the whole thing was some of it. And I, like I said, I have my opinions from based on my experience and how I got here. I had a source in, when I was in the first in FBI, I had a source that was giving me some information, and he was just one of these guys that was a conspiracy type guy. And he at one point said, well, you know, there was 2 bombs that went off in Oklahoma City. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he told me about the seismograph readings. There was 2 different, and I forget how many like minutes, you know, milliseconds or, you know, partials of a second apart they were. And they were read in California at 2 different, you know, places, and or same place or whatever. And they saw 2 seismographic things when the bomb went off. And he said, so that he was saying that the government blew one up, and, you know, and the guy blew the truck up. And I said, look, I never heard that. Let me go talk to some people. And when I went and researched it, and again, the internet, this was 96, internet wasn't the same, but I researched it and talked to people. And what they said was like, look, it was the same explosion. The first seismographic reading went along the crust of the earth and got to California at this time. And the second seismograph, it had gone down. It hit this one plate in the earth's surface, and then it traveled over. And that's the difference in time was the difference in distance that it went down and then over. And that's why there's 2. And I went back to him and I said, hey, look, you know, like, I'm not, you know, this is what I'm finding out and I'm talking to. And he's like, oh, I never heard that. And, but again, if you don't have the discussion back and forth, like I grew up like in my high school senior picture, the World Trade Centers are behind us. I've had friends from the town I grew up in die there. I flew over the Pentagon that night in a commercial aircraft. The only one in the sky was bringing the FBI's hostage rescue team back to National Airport. And we flew over the Pentagon, and I was doing reserve duty in the Pentagon at the time, before and after 9/11, and the plane had hit right where, you know, the office that I went into my reserve unit. So, you know, 9/11 is very close to me. In that, I also started like my life and the life of many of the guys that I deployed with changed after 9/11. We went from being gone like 1 week a month to being gone 70-80% of the year at times, and deploying and losing a lot of friends because of it. And then
Serious
also
moment
though,
in history.
you know, I worked in the Pentagon under Rumsfeld, and you talked about being told about not getting involved in Iraq, and he was warned that if you take it over, if you do the invasion of Iraq, you're going to be stuck with this horrible, dilapidated country, and we were. And then we talked about it earlier though, when who's it, Bremer? Yeah, when he on one day said that if you were in the the Ba'ath Party, you couldn't work for the US. And that literally changed the insurgency, because if you it's like being a Nazi back in World War II. There was truly the believers in Nazis, and there's people that if you wanted a job, if you wanted to, you had to quote be in the Nazi party, and we end up taking a lot of them scientists and stuff and using them for a nuclear program. But there was a difference
Just a tiny
between what's that?
just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
just a little bit. Yeah,
yeah, there's a
Sony
difference.
did pretty well. Sony
Yeah.
did pretty well as well, I have to say.
So
After
if
what-
you look at Iraq, if you wanted to have any kind of life, you had to be in the Ba'ath Party. And doesn't mean that you're true believers, that you just did what you had to do to get you, like you said, get your family to survive.
Right. 100%,
So
100%.
when he just said, hey, if you're in the Ba'ath Party, you can't have a job, it took a whole bunch of people that were looking at the reconstruction of Iraq and being part of the solution to now they were out on the outcasts. And that's literally what Al Qaeda had glommed onto to then fight us in the insurgency. It literally changed the direction of the war by that one thing of saying Ba'ath Party cannot work. And so you took them from being part of the solution, and they were the intelligent people that knew where the problems were and were helping us already. And then all of a sudden the next day they couldn't be part of it, and change it. And I was there at the time. I was, in there, and I went back, I think 6 or 7 times to Iraq, and saw the difference like in it. But that was the changing moment. It was just one decision that really kind of hurt us in that. And then also we didn't understand the Sunni and the Shia complexities. And when you look at the problems with Iraq, Iraq goes back to World War I, where they took Sunnis, Shias, and Kurds and put them together in one nation state for administrative purposes. Like, who thought that was going to go well? I mean, we had the joke in Iraq at one point when the insurgency, the Sunnis and the Shia insurgency started going really bad. We're like, well, maybe we should bring Saddam back as a consultant because he was figuring out how to deal with this. We're not.
Dude, America, the only thing that you guys, I'm telling you, man, you guys can put together an operation beautifully, right? See your black operations, the operations no one hears about. Beautiful. See, once it starts getting over about 15 or 20 people in an operation, right? Everything goes a bit mad, right? Well, like, it just all goes a bit mad. Like, I genuinely feel like I would much rather see America with 5 like super soldiers that just go in under the cover of night and deal with everything, because you're good at that. You're good at that. But then the other side of it is a bit Team America like. And then the aftermath, I feel like there needs to be like okay, hi, you have been liberated by the USA. Welcome to the US admin department where everything is awesome. Like, we just need something like that, because once you guys get to that stage of rebuilding and like communicating, it just seems to go awry. And don't get me wrong, if I'd been out in the desert for 6 or 7, am I wrong? You tell me.
I think the problem is we think everybody wants to be like America.
No, that's true. That's true.
And the thing is, one is not everyone's capable, and I don't know how much America is going to be capable soon with like, again, because all the infighting and stuff like that. But
yeah,
when like if you read about Afghanistan, it's a tribal warlord type thing. Like, they're not capable of the same democracy as the US has. I mean, so to think that we can just take our system and plant it over there and it's going to do well, and the same thing, like our problem, like with in Iraq, we put the Sunnis in charge after Saddam left, because we put the Shias in charge. Saddam was a Sunni. and they were like the minorities, and he was very cruel. And we thought
Yeah.
that, well, the Shias are going to come in and they're going to understand what it was like to be, you know, basically manipulated and hurt, and being run by your enemy to a point. And we thought they were going to look at that and say, well, we're not going to do that. And that's not exactly at all what happened. They said, it's our turn. Now we're going to, like, do that, do
Yeah.
what they did to us back on them.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, we thought, like, back in the day when that was going on, like, the Democrats win the presidency and the House, and they're in charge, and then the next president's the next, is Republican, and there's a turnover, and it goes well. We thought that would be what, like, Iraq would happen. Like, no, that's not it. You have to look at the history and the culture and everything else. Like, we can't just take America is a miracle in itself. Like, I think, how it was formed and everything else. But not everyone wants that. Not everyone's capable of it. And to think that we can just take it and plant it here. And I think that's what people are getting back to. We can still have certain things, like if a country threatens us or whatever, or if a terrorist group does it, we can do certain things, but we don't need to go in and say, now you need to be just like us over here. I mean, those days, I think, we're in the communism and democracy back in the day when Russia and America were at it. Like, we had to get the most areas with our, democracy to counter the communist wall. And you go back in history too, though. I mean, that's like, the conqueror gets to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
But I don't think America is, understands that when we go over there, we can't plant what we have here and just think it's going to take off and going to grow like a great, democracy like us. It's just, I think it's like, it's naive to think that. And it's arrogant to a point. But America's a great country. I don't want to lose it here, but I don't think we have to plant it everywhere in the world for us to still be that way.
It's a good point. I kind of feel like as soon as I said that and you gave me your answer, I was like, oh God, this is stupid civilian thinking he can fix the world with these stupid suggestions. But when you actually see it and you've lived it like you have, it's like, it's not as simple. Nothing's as simple. The drones above your house is not as simple as that. What you do after you've liberated a country is not as simple as that. And that's the thing. And I guess that's what makes these jobs so tough, right? And that's why you can never please anyone in any of these situations. And you're a really fascinating man, Rob. Like, you've really quickly made me realize that us as civilians, right, need to shut up when it comes to some discussions, because
I don't think anyone should shut up. I don't, because if you
I don't mean it as harshly as that. I don't mean it as harshly as that, but it's amazing how fundamentally ignorant we can be to things. That's really what I'm getting at. And it would be the same in everything, Rob. If I just got into fixing up old cars and you've been doing it for 40 years, I think I know everything. You're going to show me real quick how little I know. And it's interesting.
Yeah, it's experience. It's the same thing in law enforcement. You think you take all the drug dealers off the street and whatever. You think there's going to be, like, you put them in jail for a long time. And when you first, like, when I'm a first year cop, that's what you want to do. When we first got over to Iraq and Afghanistan, like, kill everyone who's, responsible for 9/11. And then you start figuring out, like, these people aren't responsible. This guy farms rocks, and and his cousin happens to be a Taliban guy that came in and stayed overnight. And because of his family, he stayed there. We got his phone there, and we're now raiding his place. And if you treat his family like crap in front of him, now he has an obligation in his culture to get back at you. Like, those things you got to understand. That those are mature, like, having been there a few times, looking at it, seeing it that way. And the same thing with police work. When you think you get there, I'm just going to arrest everyone. That's not the right answer too. So it's life, and as you go on, but you always do need, like you said, you need outside opinions. You need people to, sometimes a person on the outside, because they're not so myopic on the problem, can look at it and say, well, this, and you're like, holy cow. Like, if you're, if you're open, like I always say in investigation, the worst investigator is a closed-minded person who thinks they know who did it right in the beginning, because then everything that comes in that's counter to that, they will discard, and I
Yeah.
always say, like, you have to
Yeah,
have that open mind.
yeah, if you're not actively trying to disprove your own theory, you're not a
Yeah.
journalist. If that makes sense,
Oh yeah. Yep.
And it's really interesting. And there's a couple other things I want to get onto, right? So the I think as well for all of us, right? We hear on the news, evil tyrant, right? America has to step in for whatever reason. Definitely not oil, Rob. Okay, it's not about the oil. We're just gonna get that myth out. We're gonna push that myth away. It's definitely never been about the oil. So America steps in, and then the world's sort of like, well, why isn't everybody happy now? The evil overlord is gone. Why isn't everybody happy? But it's not as easy as that when you consider what you said about the three different factions of Muslim being put together, two of them being severely oppressed, one of them now getting into power and being like, it's my turn. It's understandable when you've got decades and centuries of religious and political turmoil. And then just because one tyrant, right, who gets a bit gassy sometimes, has been taken out of the game, it's not as simple as now everything's Disneyland. And do you think America realized that? Because I think Vietnam was a big eye opener. Do you think that the complexities of the cultural division, even though they were all in one united place, was something that was underestimated, or was it just always assumed to be an ongoing nightmare when it came to Iraq?
I think some people understood it. Though again, when you look at like the turnover of the military, if it's year to year, then you have one that understands it and one that comes in that doesn't understand it the same way, and he sees it a different way. And then so and then the administrations change too, and you have people that understand it and then they go away and not. And so I think those are some of the bigger problems in there. There's some great books on it after the fact that you can read, and history, like reading history and things like that are so important. And that's how I didn't know that much about World War One, and then when I was in Iraq, I read a great book on God, it was I'll have to think of it. It's by like a special forces guy, but he followed World War One, and this guy that worked for Standard Oil and a guy worked for the State Department, kind of the early intelligence thing, and understanding how Iraq was formed, and then looking at the history of it and the people, and then going, putting it back together, then understanding it a bit more. And then there's some great books on Afghanistan, same way, where, for like thousands of years, it's been one way, and be able to think like, and not even learn from the Russians that were in there, thinking you can do it certain ways. And again, thinking that they want our democracy in itself. Now, some of the things that happen, it's odd because when you look at pictures of Kabul in the 50s, girls wearing the mini skirts going to the record store and stuff like that, you look at it, you're like, how did that go backwards? How did literally they were up in the times of the 50s, and how did it go backwards? And you can study that too, because they were capable of it. But as you got out from Kabul, and like we would see people that walked for like hours just to get water. Like they lived in like biblical times, right? In Afghanistan. And they didn't want, like, we would go. I remember I was out with the special forces, I was with the SEALs, and we're reinforcing the special forces team that was putting a border checkpoint, so that when you went from Pakistan to Afghanistan, you had to go through this border checkpoint. And we're out in the middle of nowhere. It is the middle of nowhere. And when the Taliban kept coming over the hills at night and sniping at the special forces guys, so the SEALs and that I was with went out there to help crush them and stuff. And when you talk to the people, though, their tribe was on both sides of the border. They didn't recognize the Afghan-Pakistan border. Their tribal area encompassed both of it. And now you're putting a checkpoint for them to have to go see their other tribal people that you have to declare what you brought from one to the other. And they didn't not like the US government. They just didn't like any government. They didn't like the government in Kabul because they're tribal. They're like, leave us alone. We have no deal in this at all. They're biblical in the fact, like, they walked for the water. They didn't have electricity. And here we're putting this border checkpoint on to prevent them from really being a solid, tribe together. So it's not like they didn't like us. They just didn't like anyone telling them, like, I have to go through this checkpoint to declare goods back and forth when I'm going to trade with my tribe. And people don't get that. Like, that's just like, the guy in Montana wants to be left alone. Doesn't recognize whatever borders you're putting up, so to speak. So it until you see it, on hand, and you talk with them and stuff like that, it's tough to really understand.
See, Rob, I'm going to be honest with you. I've had my eyes open to a lot of the complexities of things that, until you start saying them out loud, become really obvious once you point them out, but you don't really think about in a lot of this, whether it's the drones, whether it's how you deal with war and the aftermath of it all. And I'm kind of blown away by just how much knowledge you have and the things that you've done. So can I just spin this round and make this about you for a minute, if you don't mind, Rob, right? And just give us a summary, right? Before I ask you my silly questions, give us a summary of what's going on in the world just now, the whole concept of World War III, drones, and I mean, I'm not going to be funny. I have nightmares about waking up that I'm going to see on the news that 250 million tiny Chinese drones have taken over America, right? Like, that is one of my biggest nightmares, right? Because why wouldn't they do that? Do you think we are going to be seeing, with this upscale in warfare that's going on right now, do you think it's no longer going to be the nuclear war threat? It's going to freaking be Terminator, bro. It's Skynet. It's going to be the drones. It's going to be a whole country could possibly invaded. Do you think that's likely? Do you think we could see that? Am I just being a crazy civilian again? What's the realities of it, do you think?
I do fear AI and the whole Terminator and Skynet thing. That's my greatest fear, is that as we're going through all these things, defenses and offensive, capabilities with drones, that's coming. The robotics is coming. Less man, on the battlefield's coming. Piloted planes are going away, type of thing. And the problem with that, combined with AI, I think, is the biggest concern. And that's where I'd like to see these companies that are, making so much money on AI, to invest in how do we prevent that? Because I really look at that as the biggest challenge. I think the complexities with China and Russia and America and all the other powers is going on. The Chinese play the long game. I think they look at things totally different than we do.
Yeah.
America, it's funny because when I made the hostage rescue team, they're like, hey, because there's assaulters, the guys who go in, do close quarter battle, and there's snipers, even though they do the same thing too. But they're like, hey, what do you want to be, a sniper and an assaulter? And I'm like, well, I want to be an assaulter. And they're like, why? I'm like, because when someone punches me, I want to punch him back.
Do you know how nonchalant you are about your own badassery? Like, you just say these things as if they're not, when I got picked for the freaking hostage team, and it's like, dude, you are so desensitized to how cool that is, right? And just how mad it is to even be having a discussion with someone like you. And just so you know, I've put 20 minutes aside for your best stories, because I know if I could get you around a campfire where nothing was recorded, man, I'm telling you, you are the guy for the stories, and I can tell. So I want to get to that, but you gotta
understand. I hung out with like the guys in the special mission units, like Delta and SEAL Team 6. I was embedded with them, and you got guys that like you better be humble because you are with phenomenal dudes. Some of them won the Congressional Medal of Honor. Some of them are so smart it's not even funny. They're quiet. You know, the quietest guy in the room's probably killed the most people. The loudmouth probably hasn't. But when you're surrounded by them all the time, you don't like, you got to be confident. You have to be secure in who you are and what you do and what you bring to the fight, but you better not be cocky to the point where you're arrogant, because you are literally with the best. And you know, that's the thing. Like, and we tell stories, some of the stories they tell, like we just go back and forth, like over a drink. And I tell a crazy story, you know, like the time I was like, you know, doing undercover against the mafia, the guy they wrote Sopranos about, I went undercover against. And then they would tell you stories about they did.
Wait. No. You did it. You just did it again there. Say that again. You went where with the guy from Sopranos? Just.
I did 2 years undercover against the mob when I lived in Miami. I lived on a yacht, ran a nightclub, but one of the guys we ended up going against target wise was the guy that David Chase had based his character for Tony Soprano about. And Vinny Palermo, Vinny Ocean was his street name. And supposedly that's who Vinny Chase, had based Tony Soprano about. So I went against him on the and went against him means that I was involved with him undercover wise.
Again, I'm a civilian. Coolest thing I've ever heard. Just want to point that out. So, okay, look, we're clearly going to have to arrange more interviews, Rob. Okay, because there is facets of your life which I just want to sit down and just let you tell me all about. Because, I mean, where do you even start with you, Rob? Like, where do you even begin? I mean, like, but here, this is where we're going to go to now. Think back on your time in the FBI, okay, and hit me with your most memorable story, but one that isn't military based, one that's policey based, I guess, if that makes sense to you, and then we'll get into the military stuff. Because I'm sure you've got hundreds of them, but what's the one story that sticks out in your mind?
One story I've just done like 2 podcasts and TV show about was chasing a pirate around Africa for, I think it was about 8 weeks, and finally arresting him in Somalia. Now, I've done a podcast alone that's an hour and a half just on that story.
Yeah. Well, listen, just give it. You know what? Just give us the titles. That's good enough. We'll go watch the podcast. I'll link that podcast down below. Freaking.
So the first one, the TV show FBI True, season 3, episode 8. It's only 20 minutes long, but FBI True season 3 episode 8 is a brief thing I do on that. And then Surviving the Survivor is a podcast, it's a true crime podcast that I'm on a lot, talking about crimes that are going on. And he did one, if you look at Surviving the Survivor, Rob D'Amico Pirate, I think it comes up on YouTube, and that's about an hour and 15 minutes. Basically I was embedded with the SEALs. This sailboat, the Quest, got pirated by 19 pirates. I flew out from Virginia Beach to the Indian Ocean to try to rescue the 4 Americans on there. The pirates ended up killing them. The SEALs tried to do an emergency assault and couldn't save them. We end up towing the sailboat back to Djibouti behind the Navy ship, and then having to sail it to process it as a crime scene. And while we're doing that, we found out that there was a pirate on land that was a negotiator that was involved in this. There was some covert military stuff going on. A guy I ended up meeting up with had got that guy's phone, had a bunch of evidence of him being in the crime. We got an indictment on him, and we were going to plan to arrest him in Somalia. He heard about it. He escaped down to Zambia. We chased him down to Zambia. When we got to Zambia, he'd left and gone back. We ended up finally arresting him back in Somalia. It took about 8 weeks in total. And this was a team of guys I was with. It's just a crazy story. Unfortunately, the Americans, got killed, and the SEALs later, the SEALs that went on board to try to rescue him, they all died in Extortion 17, 6 months later in Afghanistan. So it's but we got our guy. Like, I flew him out. He thought I was just going to shoot him in the head and leave him on the side of a dirt runway. And I'm like, no, you're going back to the US. You're going to get prosecuted. He ended up getting, I think, 10 life sentences plus 280 years, something like that.
Dude,
but,
you could have offered me $1 million and I never would have guessed pirate story. Okay, never would I have guessed that the story you're going to hit me with this pirate story. I'll be honest with you, I'm from Scotland, and about 15 years ago, being a Somali pirate was a pretty good job opportunity before I joined YouTube. Things were rough here. But that is wild.
Well,
and it's crazy.
Funny is, when we talk about history of things, I didn't know anything about piracy until I'm trying to negotiate with pirates and then arrest them. But piracy went back to the Somalis. Back when it was bad there, the Yemenis started fishing their waters really close to shore, and the Somalis like, wait a second, that's our fish, that's our that's our national area, and they started going out and taking over the Yemenis and other fishing boats, from stealing their fish from their close in waters. And while they're out there, they started seeing these big freighters go by, and then they started deciding to take the freighters and then demand money for them, because again, Somalia was in a famine and everything else. So piracy started as a national defense of their waters and their fishing rights, and then it grew into something different. So like the Somalis didn't view piracy as bad. Like when we were tracking that guy, we weren't in good graces with the Somalis at that point. They wanted to defeat Al-Shabaab, the terrorists, but they didn't care about pirates. And we ran into a little bit, but until you understand the history of it, you just think, oh, pirates are bad. And then you look at where piracy came from there. It was defense of their own fishing rights.
Let's not forget the multiple absolutely diabolical failed oil systems that were put in all around those areas that completely devastated cultures that had been around for thousands of years. And there was a bit of why have you ruined our entire livelihood because of some oily mess or whatever the hell it was, right? And you could kind of get your head around why they were so annoyed. But man, what ballsy.
Anytime you
if you're going to be 3 or 4 or 5, 10 miles, sorry, there's a slight delay, Rob. I don't mean to talk over you, but yeah, if you're going to be like 15 miles out at sea, up against what looks like a mobile skyscraper in a small wooden tut-tut, okay, and then climb up the side of it, you should get a badge or a certificate or something, right? You need to go to jail, right? But you need a badge. It's like these migrants that walk from Africa to the UK. Sorry, you have to go home, but you need a certificate or a badge or a medal or something. If you have walked that, I don't even like walking to a freaking Tesco, bro. That's like round the corner. So, there is testament to desperation, I guess, in a lot of cases.
50% of the pirates don't come back. Like they go out to sea, they don't come back.
Yeah.
Like that's a rough life. Unfortunately,
that's the downside.
It's the warlords, though, that control these groups that make the most money. It's the same thing when you look at it. They're just using these young guys as instruments.
Rob, if you've got one rubber dinghy leaving France, right, with 30 people on it at $10,000 a seat, okay, and none of these people have any money, someone is cashing in on this whole operation, bro. Okay, and they say to us, well, we don't know how to combat it. A large pointy stick would combat it, Rob. Okay, it's an inflatable dinghy, mate. Okay, like a pointy stick. That's all you need. But that's a whole other story. I'm sidetracking into my own country's shenanigans. Okay, so let me ask you this. So, what would be your most memorable story from a deployment? Right, which by the sounds of you've got about 97, and I'm sure people who are watching will know what all these things on the wall behind you are, and I'll be like, oh my god, he's got one of these, he's got one of those. I'm a dumbass, okay? So I'm educated by the movies, Rob, with regards to all of this, and we're going to get to movies in a second, Rob, because that's who you're being interviewed by. But what was your craziest deployment moment? And it doesn't have to be. I've heard so many stories about the long drops and things like this. It doesn't even have to be a crazy war story. It could be you and your comrades or whatever. But if you got one that sticks in your mind,
I don't know. I'm gonna have to think on that one.
yeah, that's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Listen, I've put you on the spot a little bit. Don't worry. It sounds like whenever you say I was out with the Navy SEALs, I don't think you can talk about any of them, Rob. Okay, it sounds like you're the guy who probably can't. You've probably signed a lot of documentation that says you were never in places that you were, and I understand that. So let me ask you a silly. Okay, yeah, on you go. On you go.
Story. So, I'm out on a Navy ship off the coast of a country, and we're doing an op with some folks that we're grabbing some people to interrogate and stuff like that. So, it's Father's Day, and like once again, I'm gone from the kids, but I have my own sat phone, so I go up deck on the ship, and I know like NSA is listening to everything. So I go up on the sat phone to call my kids to let them say Happy Father's Day. So sure enough, I call and you know, wife answers and I'm like, hey, get the kids, you know, and they all get on the phone and say, hey, Dad, Happy Father's Day. And then my oldest, her friend was there, and I knew her friend very well, you know, because I think I was still driving them around and stuff. So I knew her very well. And she gets on the phone and she goes, hey, Mr. D, how you doing? I'm like, oh, good. She's like, Happy Father's Day. She goes, are you hunting pirates or terrorists, you know, off the coast again? Like, because she knew the pirate story. Like that one had made the news because it wasn't counterterrorism. It was, you know, and I got an award for it. So she knew that story. And she said, are you off the coast chasing pirates again? I think. And my wife grabbed the phone from her and said, have a good night. Bye. Because then on the backside, what I found out, like my wife says, look, honey, we don't ever talk about where Mr. D is when we're on the phone with them because and here I'm thinking like, and all my kids think it's normal that you don't discuss where your father is ever on the phone because someone may be listening. He may be doing some, you know, secret shit on the side. And she like started, I think, crying like, oh my God. And my wife's like, no, it's fine and stuff like that, you know, but it's funny that like you'd have to talk to my kids to see what it was like growing up where Dad left and you didn't know when he was coming home.
You're a human being. What are moments like that for you? I mean, it's Father's Day. Do you ever have a moment where you're just like, oh my God, this life has caused that moment for my little girl? Do you ever have moments where you're just
back on it? I look back on it now and wonder what I've done. And I'm sure a couple of the kids are in therapy, talking about it. But when you're doing it at the time, we thought after 9/11 that we have to go overseas and prevent terrorists from getting back here. I mean, that was, you know, and everyone, and I wasn't the only guy deploying all the time. You know, I met like, especially the military folks I was with were always over there. They still are at points. And some of the guys on my team were like me volunteering for everything. I look back on it. It's just like the wife knew that that's who I was. I always said like, oh, I have to go again. I think she knew in the back when they said who wants to go, I just put my hand up. I'm like, I always wanted to be right in the middle of it. Cause I thought I was doing well. I thought I was doing good. I thought I was, you know, helping. But you look back on it now and you kind of like, okay, there has to be a better system. And after I like later on when I was deploying and I was in charge, like the FBI in Afghanistan, I would talk to my younger guys and say, hey, look, when you go home, don't be like this, be like this and do this because it really makes it easier because your wife has been with the kids and they were in this pattern of living. And then you're going to come in and you're going to break that up and it's going to be a mess. And you don't want that. So learning how to come home after that was important too. So I look back on it now and I'm like, I probably could have done things a bit differently. But at the time, you're just trying to do the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to think that way, but I mean, at the same time, as far as you're concerned, a bunch of dudes have just taken down the two towers with planes, and it's, you know, a scary situation, you know. And you definitely sound like a very patriotic man. So I imagine as soon as the "Who's with me" is called out, you're like, your hand goes up. But I mean,
yeah, I am a patriot, and I mean, this country, like, and you talk about my career. I always think my career is like I was like Forrest Gump. I just fell into a bunch of this stuff. Um,
oh
I
yeah,
mean, I had a
because you
great time.
totally give off Forrest Gump vibes. Sure, like Jesus Christ. I don't know if we're watching
But
the same movie.
but the thing is about Forrest Gump, it's just timing of happening to be there at the right time, so to speak,
Okay.
is what I
Yeah.
talk about. Because like, but you look at it like I joined the Marines the day after I graduated high school. I went to boot camp, literally the day after.
Damn.
And everything that I've gotten from the Marine Corps and FBI, and I'm grateful for it. And this country is great, But I also look at when someone burns a flag, I look at it like I've done all this deployment and I've done everything I've done to give that guy the right to burn that flag.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing a U.S. flag burn, but I like the fact that in our country you can burn a flag, you can
I
burn
get
any
it. I
flag
get it.
because it's
Yeah.
First Amendment, and that's what we fought for. So these people that say, "Oh, if you burn a flag, you're," like I'm not like real keen on it, but
Yeah.
this is our country, and when you go over to fight for our country, that's what you're fighting. You're fighting for. You're fighting for the ability for someone to really burn your flag or your unit
Personal.
or like ever. I mean, that's the ultimate freedom that we give.
I just one second. I'm just grabbing something. Sorry, I was just grabbing something from the fridge. See, that's the thing, right? Because I'm a big believer in free speech, right?
Yeah.
But then you've got the whole argument about hateful speech. But I think people forget is it's not your goddamn human right to not be offended by something. And I think for me, I'm okay with the burning of a flag on private property, right? But see, when it's a public thing, right? I think we need to readdress that in 2025. That's just my weird little opinion here. Okay, so listen, man, I'm really having to rope myself in because we could sit here for another freaking 30 hours and we
start
still
wrapping this one up. We'll do another session, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so a silly question for you. Hollywood, the movies, we all see war movies, we all see, Black Hawk Down, things like this. Have you ever seen a war movie and thought, whoa, they've almost got this right? Because I think for a lot of people, we're never going to experience war, Rob. We're never going to be able to relate to a lot of those things. But if there's something that people can get a slight sliver of a reality, have you ever seen anything in Hollywood that's been produced where you've been like, damn, they've almost got that one right on the nail?
You have to take certain bits of it. And like if you look at Platoon, I thought Platoon got the inner workings of a infantry platoon very good. Like I thought that was really, and if you look at the making of it and how they made that and they put them in the jungle and stuff like that, that's a really interesting one. And that movie meant a lot to me. I was in like just before I got commissioned a lieutenant and stuff. And I think they got a lot right on that. If you look at Generation Kill, which was a miniseries on HBO about a reconnaissance unit in the lead of the Iraq invasion, I thought was really good. And I liked it because some of the officers were really doing stupid shit, and the troops were hounding them on it. That was a good series. I think Saving Private Ryan, like that, like when you look at the opening scene and understanding what like it was to, and I can't understand that, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's ones that I've seen that I'm like, wow, that got it right. Some of the like effects now, I forget what movie I went to. I don't have PTSD, I don't have nightmares, I don't have any of that. But I went to one, I think it was 1917 or something. It was an opening battle, and I was in like an IMAX theater where the sound was so realistic of shots being fired that I just had to leave. And it was just,
oh, wow.
It wasn't, it was the sound system and the shots
that were going out. was going to say it was probably the IMAX theater more than the movie, bro. Those things are intense, bro.
Yeah.
If you don't realize what you're walking into, and you go in, because there's one in the UK, it's twice the height of a normal cinema, and it's full like it's a curve, right? It's a lot to deal with, bro.
Yeah, the sound of bullets was really to a point where I'm like, all right, I this is overload for me, having having been in that. I'm trying to think what else, and I like the totally like spycraft ones that are way overboard type of thing. I think a movie on the law enforcement side that really hit me was The Departed, with having done Undercover. His role when he was undercover, not knowing that, like, the bad guys are good sometimes and the good guys are bad sometimes, and being in the middle of it really gets odd. And I thought, like, wow, I had some flashbacks to when I was undercover with that one.
Yeah, I'll be honest. One of my top 5 cop movies ever is The Departed, right?
Yeah.
Just there's when they get a movie right, they get it right. Anyway, right? We're not here to talk about movies, but I just wanted to I always ask people who've served those questions, right? And it's always a variety of answers. Now, first of all, how the hell have you adjusted to civilian goddamn life, bro? How are you not just like, I'm so bored? Like, you must have, you must keep yourself busy. Like, I imagine you are what was it like adjusting? Take us through that.
Well, there's another podcast called Intentionally Disturbed by Dr. Leslie Dobson, who talks to me about doing the exact thing, coming home from these points of times to family life and how tough it was. And that's a pretty good frankness, because I hadn't spoke of it before. One time I scared my second, I came home and surprised them, and I had a big mullah beard because I just come back from Afghanistan, and they didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks, even after I shaved. And some of it was like, one day we were leaving Iraq, and it was a bad time, and we had to get from the green zone over to the airport, and we were self-driving in some armored vehicles, and the helicopter, like a mini helicopter, was above us just shooting the minigun. And I remember the empty casings were falling on our vehicle as we broke out into the non-green zone area to get over to the airport. And later that night, I'm at the Ritz-Carlton, literally from that to the Ritz-Carlton in less than 12 hours, having probably at the time a McKellen Scotch or something. And like, you look at World War II, the time coming back on ships, and like for the first Gulf War, it took me a long time to get back home and stuff. And when you go from that to, the night before, you're literally in, a gunfight, and then you're getting on a plane, and you're going back to where you can get anything at, Amazon and the store that you want, and you're used to. So it's a dramatic change to a point, and if you do it over and over again, like I did, you've kind of figure out where the fall points are. The adrenaline, like I think part of that was why I was volunteering all the time, was the adrenaline that I was getting from over there. And unfortunately, it's also selfish. When you're over there, everyone is focused, everyone's working hard. Like the guys I was with, it was 2, 3, or 4 months, depending how long the rotation was, of intense moments. And then you were, you went out at night, and you came back, and then you slept during the day, you woke up, you went to the gym, you ate, and then you got ready to do it again. And it's all really focused, and all those problems that are home with your family and stuff like that really is not on your plate. So you can get kind of addicted to that part of it. And that's kind of selfish, because some of it's really fun, and you don't have all these other things coming in, and annoying you, so to speak. So that's the selfish part of it. It is
selfish, like, Rob.
Yeah, I think to a point.
But or is it an essential part of being able to do what it is you do? And really think about that, because
you do, when you're over there, you must have been able
to switch off. You really must have. And I think you need, think there will have been moments of hesitation in careers where people are overwhelmed with what's happening back home. They're overwhelmed with decisions they've made, and be able to just put that the hell away, right, until you're on the ship home.
Yeah.
I think you need to seriously say to yourself, you can look back and call it selfish if you want, but you might not be looking back if it wasn't for those capabilities. You know?
No. So I always say, like, when, like, sometimes I would always have my own sat phone, so I could call home and do homework with the kids before I went out. And then when I went out, though, and this is where it's a switch. So you're doing all these things, and then when you put on your kit, it's like a switch. You flip a switch, and you don't think about your family. You don't think about anything, because you got to think about walking through the minefield. You got to think about the snipers. You got to think about the IEDs, and you don't want anything else to come into that. And then when you get back, it's like the SEALs I was with. It was funny. They would be playing all the video games. I never played video games. They'd be playing Madden football. They'd be playing Halo or whatever. They would pause the game. They would go out. They would kill 20 guys. And then on the helicopter back, they would be arguing about the Halo game or the Madden football game, and not even talking about the 20 dudes they just killed. So it's the ability to turn it on and off. So the mob guys, though, was the same thing. Like, if you look at Sopranos, the best thing about that show was it showed the duality of their lives, where they would have the same arguments with their wife and kids. As soon as they walked out that door, they flipped the switch. They didn't think about them. Like, they were, the ability to separate the two is the same with, like, the special ops guys, where you'd be just doing normal stuff. You put your kid on, you go out, you flip that switch, you do your shit, you come back, and then you can flip back to, to the regular guy.
Yeah. Well, just remember, hindsight is great, but just remember that a lot of these things that you may feel guilt about, your ability to put those things aside could be the reason why we're sitting chatting today. And what an incredible life, career, all of it, Rob. And we've barely scratched the surface of it today. And I just want to say thank you so much for giving up time and coming up and chatting with me and all of this. I can already tell you 9/11 and the secrets of the world's most secret soldiers, because I want to hear about the guys that make you go, holy Jeebus, this guy's the real deal. Because to me, you're the real deal, and it would be incredible to hear more stories from you. So, I just can't thank you enough for sharing, Rob. I really, really can, and giving up your time. So thank you so much. Tell people where they can find you. Yeah, sometimes you just need to talk to a guy who's so far from your walk of life and so far from knowing what to ask the right questions that, it makes for an interesting conversation, because, we could go nerd for nerd on the drone stuff all day, but the minute you start talking about pirates and sat phones and, dudes on choppers with miniguns, I'm just like, get the popcorn. I'm sitting back for the rest of the day and just letting Rob talk. It's amazing, mate. And men like you are often the ones that no one hears about. They are often the ones that fall into the covert, the black ops, and the top secret. And it's fascinating. And I there's one more stupid question I want to ask, right? In fact, I'm not going to ask it. We'll save that for another day, Rob, right? But it's just, it's an interesting one, because you're the part of the FBI. This year, I feel like it was the first time I'd ever seen the current head of the FBI wander off into the podcast world. Okay. Former FBI, former CIA interviewing, no problem. That's kind of how it works. You retire, then you kind of go and talk about stuff. So about 3 weeks ago, we've seen the current head of the FBI go on the Joe Rogan podcast. They talked about 9/11. It was the same time he basically said that Epstein 100% offed himself. There was nothing to do with that. And then during the conversation was when Elon text out about Trump being on the island list, right? Yeah. It's a bit odd, right? That the current head of the FBI is sitting on the Joe Rogan podcast, right? That's not. Am I a dumbass, or is that just something that normally happens? Because I don't feel like that's something that normally happens.
It's never happened before. But again, I'm not going to say right or wrong, but times change, and how you communicate with society change. So and that like Jim Comey started pushing back against editorials where he would write back in, and everyone in the Bureau loved it, because before the directors like, oh, we just can't make any comment, where the, FBI. But as times change, like if you want to get like kids' attention, especially in recruiting and stuff, you better make a TikTok video, even though it's controlled, the whole algorithm, and it's Chinese and stuff. But
Of course, yeah.
You better start being able to figure out how to talk to society, and there's different means. Like if you want to talk to the elder, the older ones that watch the Sunday news shows, you go on them, and the FBI directors have never been on that, but other politicians have been on the Sunday news shows. So what's the difference in podcasts? There is none. It's just how people are doing it nowadays. So I think media in general, you have to figure out how, if you want to talk to people, I mean, what's Joe Rogan's subscription rate? Like
all of them. That's how many, all of them. Okay.
Yeah.
How many active viewers?
All of them. Some of them I can't take. I'm like, I can't take this. I turn it off. And some of them like, oh, it's really cool.
Yeah. Right.
And I do like
I agree.
the fact that you have different opinions on there. Like I don't agree with them, but I'd love to talk to people I don't agree with too.
Let me throw this one at you, and then we'll let you go. So for years, us normies, right, have been pushing back against the system, questioning government statements, and looking for ways of getting our news from sources we trust. It's evolved into YouTube. It's evolved into podcasts. Do you not think in fact, you don't even have to answer me, right? You just need to just let me say it. Do you not think it's very interesting that the first time the FBI director goes on a podcast, it felt like he was there to correct a narrative, right, that had been so outspoken about with regards to what happened to Jeffrey, right? I feel like it felt a lot like a first attempt in using a platform like Joe Rogan to give credibility to a narrative that Joe Rogan's viewers have already written off. And it almost felt like by using Joe Rogan's platform, it was legitimizing this theory that, and again, you don't have to talk on it because you're former FBI, and I get it, you probably get a letter from someone, but it just seems that by pushing there's absolutely no way, there's no way anything could have happened in that cell to Jeffrey. It just couldn't possibly have happened. I'm the leader of the FBI. Trust me, I would know. It felt like trust me, bro. You know the meme, trust me, bro? It felt like that. And it was a very interesting use of platforms and narrative to correct a mindset that it would be a lot better off if that mindset was corrected for America and there was no worries and to worry about the list, everything was okay. I felt it was a very interesting tactic because we've never seen the FBI director there. And just so happens that the things that were spoken about and the things that came up, I felt like he was there to correct a narrative point. And that's my thought process on it.
Well, it was also a narrative point that he pushed for 2 years. Like he was a big reason that was out there. Him and his deputy, they were very vocal about it, and they both have come back and said. Now I was in the FBI. I wasn't read into the Jeffrey Epstein file. Like the FBI is very compartmentalized. Like I don't know if there's aliens. I wasn't in that. Like they keep so.
You totally know if there's alien, Rob. Don't give me that. You've seen some stuff in some skies on some boats. Don't give me that crap. You've just signed some papers that say you can't talk about it, Rob. I'm not buying. You don't get a tiny axe on your wall without seeing something, Rob. Okay, I know what you're up to. But yeah, I get what you're saying. But it would need to be that for security, right? You can't have everyone knowing all the secrets if you need to know, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But
all right. I tell you what, Rob, man, this
can go into part 2. I guess we can start here.
Yeah. Stay tuned because I can't wait to talk to you again, Rob. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here. Find all of Rob's links down in the description down below. There's a chance that I'm going to put a 30-second blooper reel at the end of this of me getting Rob's name wrong for the first 10 minutes of meeting him. So stay tuned for that. And of course, Rob, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah. So Inside the Line with Rob's a podcast on True Crime Talk. I've only done about 4 episodes now. I'm supposed to be doing 2, and I've lapsed on the last couple of weeks. I've just gotten busy. Sierra One Consulting is my security consulting company, sierra1consulting.com. And then CyberWise, it's SentryOps. So I'm around there. I think you can You can find me on LinkedIn. It's easy.
Is security operation company a really polite way of saying mercenaries?
No. It's actually
Okay.
security.
Just consult. Just consult. Just consult. I got you. I got you, Rob. I got you. Okay. No aliens. Okay. And no mercenaries. I'm there, brother. All right. Well, look, thank you. Also, I'm just saying, I'd be taking bars of gold back from Iran. I'm just saying, I'd be one of those soldiers. I'd be taping those all over me. So look, or Iraq, sorry. But look, Rob, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe. And Rob, I can't wait till next time. So thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah.